You're listening to the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. Here are your hosts, Fran Chismar and Tom Kinezic.
Doing things a little bit differently today. Welcome back and welcome to Pollinator Week. Thank you for celebrating it with Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast presented by Pinelands Nursery. I am Fran Chismar.
And I'm Tom Kinezic. And besides our regular guests, we're also going to be answering some of the pollinator questions that we got from our Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast group. So if you're not a member, here's your incentive to go join, because we're going to start doing this a little bit more often and asking members of that group 4 questions that they might want our guests to answer, that they might want us to answer. So if you're not a member, you're missing out.
You are missing out. And also, by no means at all am I a pollinator expert. I think I've said that on numerous episodes. So this should be interesting. Our answers should be. I had to do a lot of research. I had to.
Me too.
I had to trust a lot of other people. And it's also been a month since we've done a podcast, so I almost felt, even while setting it up, like I've forgotten how to do it. Now, obviously, I have, because this is for only the second time in all these episodes, this is a second take. So this is the point of the podcast where Tom and I typically do a little bit of scripted catching up, loosely scripted. But since Tom has become a father, a little over a week ago, we honestly really haven't seen each other. Tom is actually, you can probably tell just from listening, Tom is doing this remotely today. I'm in the studio, which, Tom, I got to say, you're actually lucky you're not in the studio, because I took Tuesday off and went to the beach and got sun poisoning on my feet. So I am shoeless in the studio right now, giving myself a break. Yeah. So yeah, my feet are the size of like watermelons right now.
Wow.
It's pretty amazing. Yeah. So you're lucky. Yeah. You're being spared from all this. It's perfect timing. So
I guess you're lucky too, though, because I'm shoeless at home. So
we're both lucky. So since we really haven't seen each other, we really have no idea. I have no idea what you've been up to. So I'm curious how fatherhood's treating you. You are a new father, and how are you and your wife doing?
So far, so good. But first, I'm going to give you one correction, Fran. You said this was our second time where we had to restart, but it's actually our third, because I think, was it episode 3, the social distancing episode, when you forgot to plug the microphones back in, and we got like 3/4 of the way through.
Actually, we were a half an hour in when I realized I didn't plug the mic. Actually, as you were saying that, I looked down and I'm like, did I plug the mics in? But we're good. We're plugged in. So
yeah, we've gotten a lot better since then.
And it was really that, and then with the Pinelands Nursery episode, I completely flubbed the intro, and I flubbed the intro today. So it wasn't, at least we weren't a half an hour in and we had to recreate a half an hour worth of banter. So, but how's it being a dad? How's your new life as a father?
It's going pretty good. At first I said, man, we have the perfect baby. He's just quiet all the time. Like maybe he lets out a little whimper when he wants to eat or he needs to get changed. And then I guess it was like 3 or 4 nights ago, it wasn't that way anymore. And he just wanted to, it wasn't even like he needed anything. He just wanted to hang out. He wanted to be held from like 2 o'clock to 5 o'clock in the morning. And I started getting a lot less sleep. But the last night or two has been a lot better. So it's, I think I'm still in for some trouble when it comes to sleep. But, but so far it's actually been pretty easy.
The hard part is when you start stringing those nights together. Like that's where I found, you can handle 1 bad night, maybe 2 bad nights, but when you have like 5 in a row and then you're a little sleep deprived and you're trying to function normal and you're not functioning normally, that's where it's that's when your patience starts to get tested a little bit, so it's but you'll be fine. You're doing good. I'm glad. I was thinking, I was going to say it on the last episode and I didn't, and I think I would like to pass along some advice that was given to me. So back when my first son was born, I was working at Princeton Nurseries, and at the time I was probably traveling 3 to 4 months a year on business. and I was over in the wholesale yard, and a salesman had come in, and it was someone I had worked with back in the late 80s. So we had known each other a long time. And even, the funny thing was, when we worked together, we didn't really get along, but we became friends after we didn't work together. So he had found out that I was going to be a father, and he's like, I would like to give you some advice. And what he said was, when your baby cries in the middle of the night, get up. Don't wait for your wife. Get up and hold that baby. He's like, my daughter is getting married, and I look back and all I see are lost opportunities. I look at all the time I focused on work and all the travel and all the things I missed. And he's like, don't do it. Take every opportunity you have, because you'll never know. So shortly after this, he actually passed away from brain cancer. He didn't know it at the time. And man, it really hit hard. So for both of my children, I took that to heart. And even with work, I missed Darian's first steps. I was in Louisville, Kentucky, and I just happened, and that was back before FaceTime. I think it was still like flip phones. So just take, when you're worn down and you feel like you need a break, just remember that. I'd like to pass that on to you. Just remember that advice, because before you know it, like my kids are 20 and 17. And I don't always get to see them because they're out and they're starting to have their own lives. So take advantage of it all. Let it all soak in while you have the opportunity.
Yeah, and I thought about that a little bit. Like, you got to soak in every moment, and I've actually been doing that. I've been the one waking up in the middle of the night, really just to give my wife a break, because she's helping the baby all day, and it's the least I can do to kind of wake up at like 2 o'clock and 5 o'clock to kind of calm him back down and change him if he needs it. But it is something, like, it's amazing how quickly you forget about every single thing that happened before. It's like, really, he was born on June 12th, and it's like, I didn't have a life before June 12th. Everything's happened, and it feels like it's been forever, even though it's been less than 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But it's like it completely changes, and you don't care about anything else except the baby. And
and then it transforms again, where it seems like it was so long ago. Like, thinking back to holding my children as babies seems like centuries ago. And it's so it flips really, really fast. So sometimes it's really hard, like, to enjoy that moment, because there's so many things going on. So it's just one of those things. I always think about his advice whenever I'm like feeling a little flustered or a lot of things going on. Just take a step back, enjoy the moment. That that moment's going to be gone, and you're never going to get it back. So that's
and it's interesting too, because I've been working mostly from home. I have a nice luxury that I live basically on the nursery. So I'm basically just made my office in my living room, and then if I need to go check something in one of the fields and need to look at some plants, or I need to go talk to someone, I can just kind of walk over, or if I'm feeling lazy, I'll drive over and do what I need to do. Stand at the front counter in the office and chat there. And but I was surprised that the doctors were really so strict with everything going on. I assume there'd be some changes. You don't want to let certain people hold the baby, but they really encouraged us to self-quarantine for 14 days after or before the baby was born, and then really wanted us to do it if we had the opportunity to for as long as we could after. But I don't know how long I'll be able to do it. But I guess what I was going to get to is, it's even though I'm only working in the living room, half an hour goes by or an hour goes by, I'm like, man, I really missed my son, and I missed my wife. I need to go check on him, and I'll take a walk and go upstairs to the bedroom or go to his bedroom or wherever they are, and just hang out for 10, 15 minutes, then say, all right, I got to go back to work. But I'm going to miss that interaction when I do go back in the office.
It's a nice luxury, and you'll find yourself, for as crazy as it can get, as soon as it's not there, you'll miss it. So it's not really my advice; it's Tom's advice that I'm passing along. But I'm proud to be able to pass that along for him. So but it's really
good advice, and I'm really lucky to have such great role models, not just with my parents, but a lot of people in our office, including you, Fran.
Oh, thank you. On
how to raise.
Listen,
I have some good role models on how to raise kids.
If anyone, I guarantee you could talk to anyone that I went to high school with or any of my friends from 20, 25 years ago, if you would have said, ask them, you know, is Fran going to be a good role model as a father? No one would have. No one would have agreed with that comment. It would have been a complete shock to everyone. It would have been like, no. So it's just crazy how fatherhood changes you in such a positive way if you embrace it. So it's best thing that in my life that's happened to me are those two kids.
Yeah. But so anyway, like I was just saying, I've been working from home. I see you sporadically throughout the last month or so, but I haven't looked at our podcast stats at all. I know I get the emails every once in a while about if we went up or down, but I haven't even really had the time to look at them. So how are we doing?
You know what, we're doing really well, and it's a little overwhelming when I look at the stats and see every time we release a new episode how many listens and how quickly those listens come. Our last episode, man, the first day listens were unreal and were very humbling. So we've now been listened to in 46 states and 26 countries, as well as being a top 15 podcast in Norway. So tusen takk, which is thank you in Norwegian. I did a little research there. And if any of our listeners have friends in Kansas, Wyoming, Utah, or Hawaii, kindly make them listen to an episode so we can say all 50 states. I'm tired of being in the 40s.
Yeah. And with the different countries, I didn't know this until I was working from home, but there's a thing called a VPN, which is like a virtual private network. Mm-hmm. And you can basically make it look like you're anywhere in the world. And I'm wondering how many of these people are actually listening from Norway? How many of them are just in the United States and using one of these VPN programs to direct them? And I've started using them for the security, just so people can't, if I'm accessing my desktop at work from home, so people can't get in. But so what I decided is I'm going to start checking off some of these other countries, and I think I'm going to start with Croatia. So anyone else who's listening and is using a VPN, go select Croatia as your VPN country, and then we'll become a top 10 podcast in Croatia.
We're going to rule the Croatian podcast charts. Yeah. We're just going to slowly, episode by episode, take the world by storm via VPN. Yep. You know, and you're probably right. That kind of like crushes my my happiness on, you know, thinking, wow, look at how popular we're becoming. We're being listened to all over the world. And you're right. It's probably someone in Virginia, West Virginia, listening. But
that's probably even better. It's someone who's getting information that's really pertinent to them, where someone who is in Ireland doesn't make as much of an impact on them. But.
No, it doesn't. And, you know, it's nice to see when you look that, you know, being that we're based in New Jersey is only 40% of our overall listens. That makes me happy. You know, the Northeast is where the bulk of our listens come to. But once you get past, like, New Jersey, New York, PA, Virginia, and Maryland, it's California, it's Indiana, it's Illinois, like with big listens. So it's nice to see that what we're talking about isn't just relevant here to the Northeast, that it's making sense to people across the country. You know, because it's really the message. It's not just Northeast natives. It's being natives and what it does for the environment. So we're trying to provide
a mix of guests. That some of them are super regional. We even have some lined up that are really down to individual communities. Mm-hmm. Some of them are countywide, statewide. Some of them are more regional to like the Mid-Atlantic or Northeast or. And then we have some national programs like Monica and the Rough and Xerxes side. They're national programs. We just happen to talk to some people that are local, but they spread all over the country. And even some of these tinier programs, some of the more local stuff, while if you're listening in California, something about that's going on in New Jersey, it might not be relevant to you, but there's probably an organization like that right in your backyard that you can become part of.
And that's our hopes.
That kind of segues even into our next guest. We've talked probably too much today.
We did. We did. That's what happens when we don't see each other.
Yeah. But with our next guest, it's an organization I really don't know a ton about, but it's an area of New Jersey that I consider one of my favorites, and an area that I don't spend enough time in, but every time I'm there, I'm like, oh, man, I really love it here. And so, Carolyn, I'm actually going to let you introduce the Sourland Conservancy and yourself. So why don't you go ahead?
So my name is Carolyn Galvez. I am the Stewardship Program Coordinator for the Sourland Conservancy. So the Sauerland is kind of like a hidden gem of New Jersey, and we classify the Sauerland region by geology, namely by the diabase rock that is the foundation of this area. So the Sauerland Mountain region is a 90 square mile area in central New Jersey, and it's also the largest contiguous forest in central New Jersey. The Sauerland region is home to a diverse number of plant and animal species, and we have over 350 state endangered plant species, as well as quite a few animal species, such as the bobcat. Migratory birds. Yeah,
I didn't
know that.
It's
really cool here. Migratory birds use the Sauerlands as a place to rest and eat during their migration, as well as some even stay to breed, such as the scarlet tanager, who needs really deep forest to raise their young. The Sauerland Mountain region also provides headwaters that flow into the Raritan and Delaware rivers and provide clean water to millions of people. This region is also really rich in cultural history, just like the forest. The Lenape Indians first settled in this region about 10,000 years ago. And in the 1600s, Dutch farmers arrived here. They also brought the region's first black slaves. After that, the British came, and then in the 19th century, industry that was here was mostly lumber and quarries and agriculture. And this region started to become kind of infamous for artists and bootleggers. And Charles Lindbergh kind of made this place really famous for a short while when the Lindbergh kidnapping happened. That was right here in the Sauerland.
I did not know that.
So, yep, right here. So if you come to this region now, it's really, really spectacular. There's 26 trails open to the public, and there's a little bit for everybody. So if you want to go bouldering or mountain biking, kayaking, there's places for that. There's really steep, rocky trails to hike up, and there's beautiful flush meadows. There's handicap accessible trails and incredible vistas that look over on the Delaware River. You can also learn more about the African American history of this region by checking out the Salzburg Sauerland African American Museum, which we work with closely to share stories of people who are often left out of the history books.
You know, one of the things about that area, I grew up in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. Driving through that area as a kid, it's striking visibly as soon as you enter it, and it's not. To me, I don't think it's what most people think of when they think of New Jersey.
Right.
If you're not from that area, obviously, if you're from that area, it's what you know. But to me, that's like those forests aren't what I expect to see in New Jersey. Like I expect that more like in upstate or western PA, not there. So, you know, a lot of people think of the beaches or South Jersey farmland or you know the Water Gap area or just congestion, but Or
Newark, for instance.
Or
Newark in the airport.
Right. Yeah. Anything along the turnpike.
Yes.
You know, that's New Jersey.
Exactly. So they don't think of that, but when you're there, it's almost as if you're not in New Jersey. To me, it's a whole nother world, and that's, you know, and for an area with such rich history, it's great that there are keepers of that land because we all know, especially in New Jersey, land can go pretty quickly.
Right. It definitely does. And, you know, I think that it's so easy to get lost here in a nice way of getting lost because each part of the ridge along the Sauerland Mountain is different. There's different plant communities. There's kind of a different feel of the forest. You know, it's only 90 square miles. I mean, it's a big area, but it's not a huge area, but you can feel the difference depending on where you are on the mountain. And
you know, it's fun.
I'm always amazed I never see that many people out there.
Yeah, you know, and this happens every episode. We pre-write questions out, and as soon as we start talking, I'm completely coming up with different questions. So that area to me is so beautiful, and with land at a premium, especially in those areas. it has to, or the road to keep that preserved has had to have been a hard road, because you would think, oh, this is a beautiful area, I want to live here, and then houses start popping up and it becomes more populated. What are some of the challenges? Like, how difficult was it to help that land and preserve that land?
So a lot of the work done here is community-based and nonprofit-based. Okay. So the Sourland Conservancy, until last year, we did not actually own any land. So we work with other nonprofit organizations and municipalities to protect land. So, we often work with DNR Greenway, Friends of Hopewell Valley Open Space, Mercer County Park Commission,
all great
preservation.
All great institutions too.
Yep.
You're mentioning
Hunterdon Land Trust. All of these organizations we work with, and so they're the ones, going through the legal process of purchasing and preserving the land, the Green Acres Fund, everything like that. They work with that, and then we come in and we try to help, whether it's stewarding the land, so whether it's helping them remove invasive species, or, working together for educational programs or restoration projects. So that's where we, as an organization, are really, really strong at promoting and, collaborating with other organizations to purchase land, and then we can help them.
Well, how did the Sauerland Conservancy come about? We know a little bit of the history of the Sauerlands, but how did the Conservancy come about to become what we're talking about today?
So the Sauerland Conservancy was started in 1986, and Robert Garrett was the founder of the organization. And basically, it was a kitchen table organization where it was a handful of residents got together, and they were really worried about the development that was encroaching on this region. They recognized the importance, ecologically of this region and why we needed to protect it. So that's how it started, was, residents getting together saying, we need to do something, and we need to stop this unnecessary development. We need to protect the land here. And it led to our mission, which is protect, preserve, and promote the Sauerland Mountain region. So it's as old as this organization is, as old as I am. And, they've been working tirelessly for coming up 34 years.
And that's still, as far as organizations go, that's still in its infancy. I think you've accomplished a lot in starting at a kitchen table to where you're at now. Absolutely.
And we've only actually had, I think, paid staff for 7 years.
Wow.
So,
I didn't realize that.
It's been volunteer driven for years. And even now, there's only 4 of us. There's 1 full-time staff member, our executive director, Lori Cleveland, and then there's 3 part-timers, which me, there's Maya Robles, our administrative assistant, and Karina Ran, our communications coordinator, and the other part-time. And I think that for as tiny as our organization is, we get a lot done.
When I think of the Sauerland Conservancy and the work that you do, I would have never have guessed that was the size of your staff. I really would not have. I would have guessed it was much larger than that, because I think your reach is really well and known. So I love hearing, and this goes back to when we talked to Kelly Gill from Xerces, that was a butterfly club that evolved to what it is. For all of our listeners out there that are wondering how they can make a difference or what they can do, around a kitchen table is now the Sauerland Conservancy. Like, it's all these, or a butterfly club is now the Xerces Society. You can make a difference. You really can make a choice, and I think you're a great example of that, the Sauerland Conservancy.
Yeah, I think, a really important message I think people should take home is that, like you said, you can make a difference. You can have a positive impact on your environment and in your community. You just have to work together. You have to work hard, but you can work together, and you can accomplish a lot when you put your hands and your heads together. except not during quarantine. Don't put your hands anywhere.
But, you know, because there's only 4 of you. There's only so much work that 4 people can do, especially if 3 of you are only part-time. So the more people you get involved on a volunteer basis, the more they become stewards of the land on their own. And hopefully they
Absolutely.
share and they bring more people in, and that organization grows. How do you get people involved with the Sourland Conservancy? What are some of the efforts or reaches that you do to get volunteers?
So we have a bunch of different programs. So our mission is protect, promote, and preserve the Sauerland Mountain region. And so we do that through a couple of different categories. We do that through stewardship, we do it through education, and we do it through advocacy. So in our stewardship program, we have a couple different ways that we work with volunteers. So one is Steward Shops,
Okay.
where a member of the Sourland Conservancy invites somebody from their stewardship committee, which is a volunteer on our committee, or it's me, comes out to their house, and we look around and they talk about some issues they're having with their land, or they want to create some sort of habitat for birds or butterflies. And then we invite the public to come to this person's land and walk through it together. We develop a plan for them.
Okay.
And it's a very open community conversation about ecology and ecological services that can be provided, whether it's managing soil erosion or if it's creating a butterfly garden or whatever. But we really like to pull people in from the community and have this conversation where it's not just somebody necessarily on their soapbox, shouting about you need to do this, you need to do that, but opening the conversation.
And some people learn better hands-on,
Right.
better than sitting at a computer and going through a list of things, where they actually have the opportunity to walk a property and talk with an expert and learn firsthand, which I think
Right.
in some cases it sticks a lot better than what you read.
Yeah, and community knowledge that just because somebody went to college for something doesn't necessarily means that they know everything. That there's
Yes.
people that are really, really in tune in the land, especially that have grown up here. They know what works here. And we want to hear what they have to say. So that's one of our ways is Steward Shops. We also engage volunteers through plantings. Last year we did a Roots for Rivers restoration project where we had over 200 people come out and get trees in the ground. We do pollinator pocket plantings with Hopewell Elementary School. We have a great stream monitoring program that we do with the Watershed Institute and NJDEP. And we have a whole group of different types of volunteers that come out for that, because some people are really into aquatic, benthic macroinvertebrates. Some people are really into plants. And so it's funny that those two groups of volunteers really don't mix too much, but I love both of them. Both groups are awesome. We get volunteers in with our education. We have experts come and give guided hikes about plant ID, birding, archaeology, and mushrooms, like all different things that are here in the Sauerland that are really exciting. And we also have a seminar series in the fall where experts will come in and give a seminar on carbon sequestration in Sauerland forest, or about lichens, African American history in this area. There's just a really, I guess, community-based education is kind of how I want to say it, because it's everybody that are giving these talks are people that live around here. And then our advocacy is another way that we have volunteers engage, where we're fighting unnecessary and dangerous development like the Penny's pipeline.
Okay.
And helping to find out if somebody else is going to cut down a bunch of forest to build a tennis court. And so we'll go and try to fight against that. So, and almost all of that is volunteer run. So the staff, helps with logistics and, organizing things. But I mean, if we didn't have the volunteer base that we have, we couldn't get done even a quarter of the things that we do now, because our volunteers are so enthusiastic and so passionate that it really just drives our organization forward. And
you need that, because when you're dealing with nature, it's broad topics, but we all tend to have our narrow specialty. So, I'm by no means an expert on anything, but what I could speak intelligently about is a very narrow subject. and you need, like I'm not strong on pollinators, I'm not strong on a lot of other things, but if you have that network of all of those people there to create one, that's one heck of a network. That's whatever you need for that ecosystem. If you have someone there that can help with that and teach others, that's a pretty valuable tool.
It is really amazing, and people will call us up and say, I just saw this crazy bird, I took a picture, can you help me figure out what it is? And we know a whole list of volunteers that work with us that are great ornithologists, and we just send them over that way, or they have some other amphibian question where they found yellow spotted salamanders in their septic pipe. They're asking what to do, and I'm like, well, I don't know, but I know who does know, so I'm gonna connect, and so I think that's again what we're really good at, is connecting people, and filling in where help needs to happen.
And you feel good when you're able to help, when you know something that can help or solve someone else's problem. That's a good feeling, and it makes you want to get involved and be involved, and that's awesome. Before I forget, you did mention the Roots for Rivers program, which I'm sad that that's almost over, because that's been such a great program.
I know.
For the last few years now. I'm very excited. We're going to have in soon. We're kind of waiting till restrictions ease up a little bit, but Michelle de Blasio from the Nature Conservancy is going to come in and talk a little bit about what that program did. And so I don't want to ruin it, but I'm happy that you brought that up, because that was such a great program. But a lot of the programs that you mentioned were great. So
Michelle is fabulous. I've loved working with her. She's so knowledgeable and so helpful, and I mean that's basically my feeling about almost all the other organizations that I work with. Everybody has been just so phenomenal.
She is, and she's happy too, and I like that.
Yes, she is. Yes, she is. So last year we partnered with Mercer County Park Commission to do a Roots for Rivers planting on Morris Creek, and we planted 1,800 trees.
Wow.
And, a lot of what we're doing is not just planting trees, but talking to people about why you want to do a riparian restoration. What happens when a riparian zones that area between, the edge of the river or stream? What important things happen in there? And so we're talking about water purification and changing the water so the water temperature is cooler and more oxygen in there, and having a bigger conversation about ecosystem services and ecosystem function. And, you might pull them in for plant a tree, but then they leave with a lot more information than, I put 3 trees in the ground.
Yeah.
And I think that,
and that, I was just saying that education is so important, because a lot of times, especially if you're a homeowner and you're butt up to a creek or a river like that, you just want to have lawn right down to the river so you can enjoy it. But then that ground starts to erode, and then they wonder why there's erosion. They bring in rocks, so they bring in concrete to put in the bulkhead, and it's kind of like a cascade of different interventions, of a lot of times negative interventions, and then just having the lawn all the way down, or anything, pet waste, fertilizer, herbicides you're putting down that lawn is now going into the water. So just the education on its own is so important, because it's something that's overall missed in today's culture.
And it really is creating a paradigm shift, because no one wants to be preached at on what to do, but they do want to be educated on why maybe what they're doing is wrong. So without telling them what they're doing is wrong, showing them, hey, if you create a bulkhead, the energy you're creating is destroying the stream further downstream, and it's a problem that can't be fixed, and things like that. Like, people just don't understand that their thinking isn't out there. But when you provide that kind of education via community that's there being helpful, I mean, that's really just creating a whole community. It's knowledge and communication that wouldn't exist otherwise, and that's not easy to just replicate. That's got to trickle down from leadership and employees, and follow through with everyone else. So the fact that you have that in such a short amount of time just really is amazing to me.
Yeah, I I really think that people want to do well by the environment. They want to do good things, and they want to support pollinators, so they want to plant a butterfly bush, and then trying to change the conversation of, I see what you're trying to do, but let's talk about it. The butterfly bush, it does provide nectar for that butterfly, but what are the caterpillars? Like, where are the caterpillars going to live? And so kind of bring that conversation of, there's a life cycle here. And so what can we do to provide for that butterfly's entire life? So we might need some grasses because they need structure to pupate on, and going through that whole life cycle of the food source and the structure and then the nectar. And then they're like, oh, like, just bringing that connection to get on it. Like you said, that paradigm shift of, you just see a bird at one stage, or you just see a butterfly at one stage of its life cycle, but you have to think about the entire life cycle, that you have to provide caterpillars for that bird to survive and feed its young. If you want to keep seeing those birds, if you want to keep seeing those butterflies. So
and
let's work together by example.
And that's when all the changes happen. That's when different birds start coming in. That's when, and listen, I understand it's tough where I live. You want to do all the right things, and when you have the raccoons going through your trash every night and the the chipmunks going under your pavers, it becomes, it's frustrating, but at least you're doing it. You attract it. You're creating an ecosystem, and you're doing the right thing. And there's a way to fix all those things and make it all better. And it's easier to become one with that. Like, you feel a part of it when you've made that change. You're not just witnessing it or viewing it out a window. You're a living part of it.
Well, and I think that's the biggest shift of all, is realizing that it's not our house, but our lawn and land forest. We are part of the Sauerland mountain ecosystem. We are part of this forest, and the decisions that we make on our land have an impact on the ecosystem, and we can make choices that are going to really benefit our local ecosystem, and we can have choices that negatively impact the ecosystem. So let's talk about it, and find something that works for everybody.
I agree.
And that reminds me of a quote that there's a fellow from Wisconsin, Doug Duran, who's like a farmer. He actually used to own a restoration contract company out here as well. But he has a quote he always liked to say, that it's not ours, our turn. And you kind of put that through in your own wording. It's not just our house or our lawn or our property. It's just our turn to kind of take care of that, especially in the Sauerlands.
Yeah, and it's a perfect time for that to have happened. Like, could you imagine if your organization had happened 10 years later, what the area that you looked like would be dealing with? It might be completely different. Yeah. Because it's escalated. I mean, progress has escalated quickly recently, so I think it happened at an incredible time, and the impact that you're doing is phenomenal. So, thinking of impact, so one of the things that's impressed me about Sourland Conservancy, so this year has been such a challenging year with COVID-19, and it affected so many great organizations who do work in the spring through volunteer work, and a lot of that went away, especially here in New Jersey. So this is a two-part question for you. How did COVID-19 restrictions affect the Conservancy, but also one of the way you handle your volunteer events, or what would be like your sale or planting event, I thought was completely unique in how you got people involved and trees in their hand and trees planted. And I was hoping that you could talk about that a little bit also.
Sure. So the COVID-19 restrictions were definitely a challenge, but first I need to give a shout out to Brendan Elliott of TechNeed, because in December he came to the Sourland Conservancy as a volunteer to help us get up-to-date technology guides.
Oh, so very nice.
He brought us onto the G Suite, so using Gmail and Google spreadsheets and all that wonderful stuff, and Slack and Trello to manage our projects. And spent a lot of time in here with us, helping us migrate all of our information and teaching us how to use these electronic tools. So when COVID-19 happened, we were able to seamlessly work from home.
Awesome.
Like everything had already just been put up online, and Lori Cleveland, our executive director, had actually closed our office 2 weeks before lockdown.
Wow.
She was like, you know, I don't feel like it's safe for us to be in the office. Let's all work from home. And so because of what Brandon did with Technique in December, really set us up to work really easily and efficiently from home. So,
which was perfect timing.
Yeah, it was unbelievable timing.
Yeah.
I think there seems to be a lot of things that are perfect timing for the Sourland Conservancy. So, as far as, you know, how we pivoted with our volunteers, so almost everything that we do is volunteer based.
Okay.
And in person. So all of our educational programs are in person, and our volunteer programs are in person. So the first thing we did as far as education and stewardship is that we moved our Steward Shops online.
Okay.
So we did Facebook Live events of Steward Shops. So people would submit their questions to me, and then I would try to answer them online and do a workshop explaining the ecological concepts for the background information as to why I'm making these recommendations. So again, it's a whole process. It's not just don't plant butterfly weed. It's this is why you don't want to do that. And then we moved on with our ACT campaign, and ACT stands for Ash Crisis Team. So back in the fall, during one of our train seminar series, Little Zipsy from New Jersey Forestry Service came out and gave a talk to us about the state of our forest in the Sauerland Mountain region. And we found out that we are a powerhouse of carbon sequestration.
Okay.
It's pretty much New Jersey Highlands, the Pinelands, and us. And we're way tinier, but we're doing almost just as much work. We're doing a really great job sequestering carbon here.
Wow.
And then we found out that the emerald ash, we knew the emerald ash borer was coming, or had came, but we didn't realize how devastating it was going to be until Will Zipsy gave that talk and told us that over 1 million ash trees are going to die in the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, you know, I was in Michigan right when the emerald ash borer outbreak happened, like within months, and you know, and it's primarily a lot of ash forests, and to just see them midsummer defoliated and dead was like one of the most traumatizing things to me. And this was a community where you can't just put a new forest in. You know, it's not that easy. You know, and I know they did everything they could to try to sequester that there and keep that there, but it's here, and there's not too many places in New Jersey where it's primarily an ash forest, but the Sauerlands has a fair amount of ash. Yeah, so in parts of the Sauerlands, ash trees make about 20% of the canopy, and other parts 70%. Wow. So that's, you know, 7 out of 10 trees are going to die in the next few years. I mean, that's catastrophic. That is catastrophic. And so that happens we found that out in about November. Okay. And then, you know, started kind of thinking about what we're going to do, and we started looking around to maybe do some really big tree plantings this spring, try to get trees in the ground now, so as the canopy dies, there's native trees there to start taking their place. Okay. And that's a big ontaking. I mean, that's a lot of canopy to replace. A lot of canopy, but we had to do something. Yes. You know? So COVID-19 happened, and then all of that volunteer power disappeared because we couldn't get people together, so we couldn't do these big plantings where we would plant 1,800 trees. Yeah. So, you know, we really started putting our heads together thinking about what can we do, and we put out on the internet at
I think, volunteer match or something like that, asking for people to help us. And we got volunteers from Washington State, Wyoming, Florida, I think maybe California too, saying, yes, we're going to help you come up with a.
Wow.
So they really just knocked it out of the park. We figured out how much it would cost for us to buy deer fencing, because in this area there's a lot of deer pressure. We have between 10. Pardon?
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
We have between 10 to 12 times the amount of deer that can be sustained in this forest. So that's about.
That changes the forest too. I mean, that's.
It does. It does. It has a huge impact. So there used to be, historically, it was about 10 deer per square mile, and right now we have 100 to 120 deer per square mile.
Wow.
So there's a lot of parts of the Sauerland that there's no understory. And the only understory that is there are invasive plants that are not being eaten by white-tailed deer, because white-tailed deer are native, so they have a preference for native plants.
Yes.
So, when there's only 10 deer per square mile, the forest can regenerate. But when there's 100 to 120 deer per square mile, the forest cannot self-regenerate. So we knew that we'd have to provide these plants with protection from deer herbivory. So everybody working together, all these volunteers from across the country, and our staff and our regular core volunteers, electronically, Zoom meetings, Google Hangouts, working together, trying to come up with a plan, and our plan became ACT, which is the Ash Crisis Team. And so we reached out to local businesses, and we got a discount or bought fencing at wholesale price. We worked with Pinelands Nursery to be able to provide plants at a reasonable price to the public, and came up with handouts and literature all about what's going on. And the big driver behind it was, you can make a difference in your local ecosystem by planting trees on your property. So instead of going to a preserve land and planting plants, we pivoted and said, let's do it on private property, because everybody's quarantining at home. We can't get groups together, but you can plant a tree in your yard. And people got really excited about that. They're like, yeah, I would love to. I would love to do something positive. And so we had lots of people buy 1 tree. We had lots of people buy 20 trees. And
it was a big success, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
It was a really, really great success.
They're super excited about it. So, right now is a really hard time for a lot of people emotionally, because of all the psychological stress that's going on, and feeling helpless, and also financially, because a lot of people are losing their jobs. So we wanted to make sure that this wouldn't keep people from being able to plant trees just because they couldn't afford to buy a tree kit.
Yeah.
So we also gave the option for people to donate tree kits. And then so there was lots of people that signed up for a free tree kit because they couldn't afford to buy one. And we just didn't want that to be a barrier getting trees in the ground. So we did 3 pickups for our ACT campaign, where people bought the trees ahead of time. They came to our parking lot. We decided and we blocked out who could pick up at what spot, at what time. Each parking lot spot was its own pickup. People could drive up and pick up their trees, load them in their cars, and take them, put them in the ground. And with our 3 pickups, we got about 600 trees planted on the property. Yeah,
that's amazing. That's amazing. And then you have built-in stewards right there.
And because we also not only provided the trees and the deer protection, we also gave them informational videos of how to plant it correctly, how to take care of it, what type of habitat these different trees need, all different types of questions. So it's not just a one-off, here's a tree, stick it in the ground. We want to make sure that they understand the positive impact that they're having on their local ecosystem, and draw them in with the slow creep of reducing your yard, reducing your lawn, plant more trees, plant native. because, like I said before, you can make a positive impact on your ecosystem, on your community, and I think it really brought people together, socially distanced, to feel good about what they were doing, for their forest.
It's when Lori told me about this program, I felt it was such a great program, just from the fact that thinking outside the box in a time frame to have to do something different quickly, and how well it worked out. I think the one thing we're learning from what we've had to do to navigate through these times are how many other we were forced to come up with alternate ways to do things. And it's such a great idea that even when it's not during these times, it's still a program that could work and be successful, which is fantastic. And part of the reason we wanted you on here was so that other organizations could hear about this, to see what they can do, even because there were places, unfortunately, that had to cancel volunteer plantings, and they didn't know how to take that next step. And here's this incredible program that was born out of taking that next step.
Great. And we, as an organization, are very tenacious. We had to cancel some of our plantings, too, one of which was a pollinator planting with Hopewell Elementary School. We were supposed to do that in April, and we could not let it go. It's like, no, we are doing this. So we changed. Originally, we were going to have the whole Hopewell Elementary School out. We were going to do a stewardship blitz with Mercer County Park Commission and go in and teach all the kids about stewardship and pollinators and all that fun stuff, and have them come out and plant. And then that had to stop. But we decided that we need to still do this. We can't let it go. So we invited the entire graduating 5th grade class of Hopewell Elementary School to come out and plant, to have a little graduation.
Okay.
And so each family could sign up for a time slot. So we had it in 30-minute time slots that families could come, and there'd be one volunteer at our foraging forest, which is where they were going to be planting these pollinator plants. And so the families would come with their masks and their gloves, and the volunteer that was there would give them a whole spiel about the foraging forest and native plant restorations and pollinators and what pollinators need and who are pollinators. They're not just bees. And allow the family to be there and, get some native plants in the ground and get outside together and do something. And then they would leave, we would sanitize everything, and then the next family group would come. And it worked out really well, and we got 400 plants in the ground this past week.
Wow, that's phenomenal. And you got all those families involved, and hopefully future stewards of the land being a part of that. That is a wonderful story. I didn't even know that was happening.
Yeah. I mean, and the families are really happy to come out and do it. Not every family came out, but a lot of them came out, and they were so thrilled, to be together and to feel like they were doing something positive and learning a little bit. Got to quiz those 5th graders on, what is metamorphosis, and it was really fun. I really enjoyed it, and the volunteers that helped out said that they really enjoyed it. So, there's a lot of ways to do things. It's not always, A to Z. There's a lot of other letters in between. So, you just got to find your way to get there. Oh,
I bet those 5th graders had a lot of really good answers.
Oh, they did. They did.
So, besides all of these great programs, I found it very interesting, some of the other things that you do during normal times. And as a music fan, I was really excited to hear about the Sauerland Music Festival, which I think is a great – that is something that I've actually talked to Tom about, saying, man, I would love to – create some kind of music festival around nature, and here's someone close by that's already doing it. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So this year was supposed to be our 17th annual Music Fest, Mountain Fest. We changed our name last year. It's the Mountain Fest now. Okay. So it started out really small, and I'm pretty sure our first one was held at Hillbilly Hall. And it soon grew to become kind of a staple of the Sauerland Mountain region. So it's local musicians, not just of the Sauerland region, but out, into Philly too.
Okay.
Come and perform, and it's a 7-hour-long festival. There's local vendors. It's, sponsored by local businesses, and all the proceeds go to the Sourland Conservancy. And it's so much fun. I only went for the last 2 years. I unfortunately didn't know about it before then. But the great music, great food, lots of fun and games for the whole family. So I'm really hoping that next year we can pick up again and do it. Mm-hmm. But we also in between sets we'd have people give talks about this region, so it was really fun.
So I've heard a little birdie told me that you're a musician. Any plans of you performing at the Mountain Fest?
Well, I'm not performing at the Mountain Fest. I'm playing at Hopewell Valley Vineyards on July 12th.
All right.
But I play guitar. I've been playing guitar, I think, since I was about 10. But a lot of the musicians that you hear at the Mountain Fest are original song artists, and I like to do covers because I'm way too cheesy to write my own music. I like playing people's stuff.
All right, Tom, we're going to have to make a road trip to go see Carolyn play. Yeah. So we've talked and we're just starting to touch on it a little bit. We talked a lot about the history of the Sauerlands and the history of the Sourland Conservancy. What kind of path led you? I always find it interesting how people end up being where they are and having it be such a great fit. What was the path that led you to the Sourland Conservancy?
So, growing up, my dad was a scientist. He worked for Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory as an oceanographer. So I kind of grew up a little bit in the lab. And then my mom used to take me to the Lorimar Sanctuary, which is run by the Audubon Society. So I really got involved in science and nature when I was little. And when I went to college, I kind of floundered around. Didn't really know what I wanted to do with myself, which is,
That's normal. That's normal.
College experience. Until I took a dendrology class, and I laser beamed in. It was, I couldn't imagine that life was this cool. I just loved it. And I just started working in different labs in forestry. So started out in Dr. Jason Bosky's urban forestry lab, and I was measuring the wingspan of Populafolia to see how heavy metals affected seed dispersal. And I was like, this is heaven. This is awesome. And just started working in different labs. I worked with Dr. Frank Gallagher at Liberty State Park looking at phyto remediation and how heavy metals affect photosynthetic capabilities of trees. I worked in the desert Southwest in the Mojave and Sonoran deserts looking at invasive species affecting fire regimes. In my master's project, I worked with Dr. Jennifer Crewman and Dr. Mila Aronson, looking at the relationships of soil microbiology communities, so soil fungi and bacteria, and how they were interacting with plant communities and riparian zones.
That's a great resume right there.
Yeah, and white-tailed deer affecting invasive plant species with Dr. Janet Morrison at TCNJ. So kind of all over, any chance I could get to learn about plants, I just jumped on it. And then when I applied to work at the Sourland Conservancy, it was just an administrative role, as an administrative assistant role. And during my interview, I was told that, I understand that you have a science background, but this is administrative work. There's no science, just administrative. And on the outside, I said, okay, sure, I understand. But on the inside, I was like, there has to be science. There's always going to be science. You can't save the environment without science. So
exactly.
Shortly after I started here, my job started changing, and there was science, and it was good. I've, been really happy, here. I mean, I get to learn so much. There's so much that I just didn't even pass my realm of possibilities that this, ecosystem types were working together. And, because I was so involved with plants, and I've learned so much about birds and amphibians and reptiles, and getting to work with people outside of academia and learning their knowledge and sharing my knowledge with them has just been phenomenal. And I've really, really enjoyed it.
That's, wow. That's really impressive. I wish I could say that my path that led me here to Pinelands Nursery was that interesting. It's really not. All right, I'm going to share my story, and it's basically going to be one sentence.
I want to hear it.
All right, it's going to be one sentence. I kind of know Tom's because Tom grew up in the nursery. So when I graduated high school, I had made the decision to not go to college. And then my father presented me with two unique opportunities. And it was, you can join the working class or you could join the homeless. So I chose to join the working class, and I had a friend that was working at Moon Nurseries, which at the time was still located in Yardley, Pennsylvania. And I had a friend working there just doing labor work, and he said, "Hey, I can get you a job if you want to work there." And that was, I think the first day I worked there, I cried because I'm like, I should have went to college. This is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. But I just had, the funny thing is when you're in school and you take those work aptitude tests of, where they try to tell you what what profession you could go towards. My test, when I took it, said botanist, and I kind of chuckled at it because I'm like, I'm going to be a botanist. But
That's
I just
awesome.
I just happened to have an aptitude for it, and it kind of just like pulled me in, and the rest was history. So it was,
That's awesome.
I was fortunate enough to work at all different types of nurseries to get a very well-rounded. I worked for one of the top 3 rose growers in the country. I worked for a very large B&B nursery. In Moon Nurseries, I worked at the Connor Pyle Company, which was an incredibly large container nursery, and then Princeton, which did both, plus grew seedlings and did introductions. And I just got a very, every step of the way got an education until I landed here. And I'm still learning here. It's been 13 years, and I still feel like I've only scratched the surface. So,
Well, I think that's the sign of knowing more, is realizing you don't really know very much at all.
I know nothing. I know absolutely.
Yeah.
I know absolutely.
I'm not agreeing with you, Fran. I'm agreeing with Carolyn that a sign of how much you know is knowing how little you know.
Yeah, I know just enough about everything to be dangerous, but not. That's about it. But no, I love hearing those stories that, because not everyone knows what their path is. And I think we need more people to find that path in this direction.
Absolutely.
I kind of feel like that gap is missing. So the more people you can get involved at a young age, like at the elementary school doing plantings, perhaps that nudges them gets them thinking that maybe this is the direction they wanted to go. And even Tom, we kind of talked about it in the last episode, that being in the nursery wasn't necessarily the direction you were planning on taking.
No, not at all. It was, I think I brought it up in the last episode, it was my brother and I just kind of had a revelation when we were both in college. It's like, wherever we want to end up, going back and starting from the nursery is going to be a lot closer to our end goal than choosing our own path. And I think our paths changed too, and it became more into the focus of the nursery, where I was going for education at one point. I was actually looking at banking at one point, and Steve wanted to be like a fish and game warden type thing. And we were able to parlay what our individual interests are and make them relevant to the nursery, and kind of pull the nursery in our own directions as we came back as well.
Well,
So,
and one of the things we really didn't talk about in the Pinelands Nursery episode, it was really at a crossroads, because knowing that you and Steve at one point didn't want to be involved with the nursery, and your parents getting older, they didn't really know where to take that nursery next.
Oh, yeah.
Because on a few occasions your dad was like, I'm really hoping that one of the employees wants to, or the employees as a whole wants to buy this out, and because I don't want it to end. Like, I'd like it to keep going. So the fact that the two of you stepped in, and not just as a stepping stone, you've kind of made it your own, which is pretty awesome. I've liked every direction we've gone in. I'm enjoying this phase of Pinelands Nursery.
Yeah, I think it's really important to talk about, that it's not always a straight shot. You can flounder around and still find a lot of joy and happiness and meaningfulness out of your work.
It was nice when we had Kelly Gill on, hearing that she wanted to be an artist and went back and changed things a little bit. And it's, I just always find it amazing, and we've had the conversation here, like, what if the best soccer player in the world never touched a soccer ball? Like, the best player may be someone that's never played. Like, what are you best at? And it seems like all the people that we deal with are really meant to be doing what they're doing. And I love that. It's people that are passionate and they love it and they're here for a reason. And I love hearing how they found that. And I hope our listeners do too, because I find it fascinating. Yeah. So
absolutely, just got to make sure everybody gets the opportunity to try.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So speaking of our listeners, we probably should should probably get to Pollinator Week questions.
Well,
right?
I'd say even before we get into the questions, let's let Carolyn say, are there any events coming up that people can get involved with? I saw something. I know you had some stuff that got postponed or canceled, but I saw that the Sauerland Spectacular is still going on in a modified fashion.
Yep, so that's going on, I think it's September 5th through the 13th. You can sign up and find information about that on our website. It's on our banner at Sauerland, SOURLAND.org. And you can click that banner and it'll take you to the Sauerland Spectacular website to find more information about that. We will be putting out a call for people to come out to our foraging forest to help us manage some weeds. So if you really like pulling weeds, especially if you're not allergic to poison ivy like me, and you want to help me deal with some poison ivy, that'd be really great.
I am insanely allergic to poison ivy.
Oh, no.
I will not be helping you.
That's okay. That's okay. I'll take care of it, and then you can come afterwards.
All right, that sounds great.
So we're definitely going to be looking for volunteers to come out and just help hand pull weeds, because we're trying to really limit the amount of herbicide that goes into the planet. So we're trying to do as much weed control as possible through hand pulling and mowing. So we would love to have some volunteers out there. You can learn some plant ID and some fun information about the local ecology from me and the other volunteers that are out there. Our stewardship volunteer crew is phenomenal. They're so knowledgeable and really happy to share it. So we don't have any dates for that yet, but we will definitely put it out so you can get on to our volunteer list at volunteer@sauerland.org or email at info@sauerland.org to find out more.
Awesome. Get involved, everyone. Be a part of this. Don't just talk about it. Be a part of it. So
absolutely.
So we did ask our listeners to be a part of Pollinator Week with us because we didn't want to have it be Pollinator Week and not touch on it. So we did ask in our Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast Facebook page for some of our listeners to ask pollinator questions. And I think that was Tom's idea. And I was like, ooh, who's going to answer them? Because I'm not really good at that. So we did get a couple questions. So we're going to read them off. And then we did a little bit of research. I had wanted to actually like I wanted like a deal or no deal, like call a friend, like can we call Kelly Gill or Marcus Gray and ask them? But Tom was like, no, let's do it. So Tom is going to be much better at this than me, but Carolyn, please join in. Please anything you want to interject, we would love it. So
okay. I'm more of a plants person than a pollinator, but I will try.
So our first question was from Kate O'Callahan, and she asked if there was a state pollinator. So real quickly, I didn't know of one, and I thought that was a great idea. And I'm like, wow, what if there is one? I didn't know about it. So I did a quick search for state pollinator, and nothing came up. I did find that New Jersey Fish and Wildlife was actively talking about how important pollinators were, and they were just using monarchs as an example. And they had even they issued a New Jersey monarch butterfly conservation guide. So it was nice that a state organization had started moving that direction, but that's kind of as much as I had found. I think, Tom, you had a little bit different success than I did.
But, yeah, I already knew that we had a state bug.
I didn't know
We don't technically have a state pollinator, but we have a state bug, and that is the European honeybee.
Wah,
And
wah, wah.
yeah, European honeybees have their benefits. They also have their detriments.
That was really, when you said that, Tom, that was really disappointing to me that was the state bug. I was just kind of bummed. And
I started getting interested knowing that we have listeners from potentially all over the world, but definitely all over the country. I said, oh, I shouldn't just say New Jersey state insect. I should see what some of the other state insects are. So I started looking up, and I found that 17 states actually have the European honeybee as their state. I shouldn't even say insect. Almost all of them said it was their state bug, which I don't know if that's the right way to put it too. But and those states were Arkansas. Wait, am I reading the right list? Yeah. Arkansas, Georgia, Kansas, Louisiana, Maine, Mississippi, Missouri, Nebraska, New Jersey, North Carolina, Oklahoma, South Dakota, Tennessee, Utah, Vermont, West Virginia, and Wisconsin.
That's all.
And all had the honeybee as their state bug.
That was like a good cross section of the country. That's not even just like the Northeast or the Southwest. It was all the way across the country there.
Yeah. Now some of the states had multiple bugs. Some of them had a state bug and a state butterfly. Like New Jersey now does, as of I think 2 or 3 years ago. We now have the black swallowtail as our state butterfly, and there's actually 12 states that had a swallowtail in some fashion, either eastern swallowtail or the black swallowtail or the spicebush swallowtail as their state butterfly. And then there was another 5 states that had the ladybug, and I like the states that pick something a little bit different. So my favorites were South Carolina had the aptly named Carolina mantis, which is one of our native mantises. There's another state that had the European mantis, so I'm not going to put them on blast right now, but there was a state that had a non-native insect. Pennsylvania had the Pennsylvania firefly, and then Rhode Island had the endangered American burying beetle, which is a beetle that feeds on like death and decaying meat, basically. So I don't know why they chose that one, but that was their state insect, according to Wikipedia.
I was oblivious to all of this. I didn't know any of this existed. So, Carolyn, did you know? Did you know?
Well, I know that we have like state tree, like the red oak, and the state flowering tree is the flowering dogwood,
and the state bird. I knew those.
Yeah, I knew those. But as far as insects, I definitely did not. No, but I'm kind of flabbergasted that it's not a thing. If we can have all these other ones, why not?
Can we start a something to change the state bug out of honeybee? Like what?
You're going to take on Big Honey then, friend.
Oh, that's you know what? It could be worse.
Yeah,
the honeybees.
At least we have one.
We do.
There were
have
2
one.
states that didn't have a state insect, but
what were they? Do you remember?
Oh, I don't.
All right.
I think Alaska might have been one of them. Hawaii did have one, but I don't remember what it was. So we're doing better than at least 2 states. So.
All right. So next question, Tom. I'm completely relying on you for the next question. Do you want to read it, or do you want me to read the question?
You can read it.
All right. So our next question was submitted by Brenda Weiss, and it is: since beetles and wasps are also pollinators, are there any specific obligate relationships between a species of beetle or wasp and a plant that are really interesting? I think I remember reading about a wasp and a species of orchid one time.
So I knew that there was going to be something. I didn't know of anything off the top of my head outside of one, and that was, and it's not really the only thing that'll pollinate this plant, but with our field of milkweed that we use for seeds, the common milkweed is just loaded with milkweed beetles. So I figured it's called a milkweed beetle. It probably has to be reliant on milkweed in some fashion. And I guess the obvious one is the monarch butterfly is a specialist on, at least the larvae is a specialist on milkweed.
Yeah.
But the milkweed beetles, they're bright red. They're if you have milkweed, you probably have milkweed beetles on them right now. They're bright red. Right now is their mating season. You can get some interesting pictures of them doing their thing, like my brother does all the time. And he puts it up on our Pinelands Nursery Instagram account.
Yes.
But they'll lay their eggs on the milkweed kind of near the base of the stem. When the eggs hatch, they'll burrow down and feed on the roots in the soil. Then they'll hatch and come up, and they'll actually, and this actually ties into another part, but the milkweed's pollen forms like a really sticky ball, and I'm forgetting the name of what the pollen ball is, but it'll get stuck to that milkweed beetle, and then as they go to plant, they'll actually pollinate other plants as they feed on the nectar, and they'll feed on the leaves as well. But the milkweed beetle was one that I kind of knew about already that had to be a specialist on milkweed. But I started looking around a little bit more. The beetles in general, as pollinators, tend to like bigger flowers. Milkweed has a bigger flower, big cluster flower. But they like magnolia flowers. They like tulip poplar, pawpaw flowers, water lilies, kind of those big like cuff flowers, because they're clumsy and they need a big place to land. Some of the cluster flowers are like our goldenrods, spireas, those kind of things.
Okay.
Getting to wasps. Now, wasps, I found there was one that was a super, super popular specialist. And not necessarily native, but there's a variety of fig wasps. For every variety of figs, there's a certain wasp that will actually pollinate it.
Really?
The only thing that will pollinate figs. And it's basically a female wasp will go into the male fig flower, I guess, lay its eggs, and then when the eggs hatch, the males will kind of burrow through and dig their way out. Then they die. And then the females will fly out through the holes the males burrow through, find another fig flower, go in, and then that's how they pollinate it. But without those wasps, you don't get figs. Only thing that pollinates figs.
Wow.
So
Interesting.
I thought that was really interesting. They must be, well, my dad has figs and he gets fruit on them, so he must have
Fig wasps.
fig wasps in his backyard. And then scientists have actually said with those that it's been like approximately 60 million year coevolution between figs and these wasps.
Wow.
As the figs have evolved, the wasps have evolved with them. It's the only thing that pollinates figs. So, and then in regards to the orchid part of that question, I didn't find a specific native orchid that this happened to, but orchids as a whole are really reliant on wasps to pollinate them. Not all orchids, but a lot of, like over 100 species of orchids need wasps to pollinate them. And they're actually pollinated through sexual deception. And the orchids will put out a smell that smells like the pheromones of a female wasp, and they'll produce flower parts that look like a female wasp. And then the male wasp will be coming along and want to do his thing, and he'll smell and see the female wasp that's actually the orchid flower, and he'll go along and get it done, and then he'll say, oh, you know what, I smell another female wasp over here, and he'll go to another orchid, and that's how a lot of these orchids are actually pollinated. And there's other orchids that'll produce, they'll actually produce nectar. There's other ones that produce deceptive nectar, and they'll look like they're going to have food, and they'll actually trap a bee or whatever's going to pollinate it in there. So the only way out is to collect its pollen. But over 100 species of orchids require wasps to pollinate them through sexual deception, which is just incredibly fascinating, I guess. It's not what I was expecting when I started looking this up.
Wow. You know what? I'm glad I let you answer that question, because I would have had nothing.
I don't know anything really about beetle pollinators, but my two favorite beetles in New Jersey are the dog-green leaf beetle. I don't know if anybody's seen that. And the golden tortoise beetle, which I had in my garden last year. And both of them just absolutely stunning little bugs. So as far as
I am writing them down so I can look them up.
Check them out. Golden tortoise beetle. When I saw it, I was like, "What?" They're incredible, absolutely incredible.
Awesome.
There's some beetles that are pollinators. There's other beetles that are, well, the Rhode Island state beetle feeds on rotten meat, and but some of them are predatory. Some of them are pollinators. Not Same thing with flies. Some flies are predatory, some wasps are predatory, some of them are pollinators. Not every wasp is going to sting you, and every wasp is going to try and carry a caterpillar away and eat other insects. Some of them are feeding off of nectar and pollinators.
You know, the only thing I could think of going into that question, it had nothing to do with either wasps or beetles, was when we had Sam Droege on, and he was talking about specialist native bees and the willow, the Salix bee, and I was thinking about like how narrowed down that is, and there has to be so much more other than that. And I'm glad I let you answer that one, because that was great information.
I'm glad I found something, because I was ready to kick that one to Sam or Kelly or Mark if I didn't find anything. But I hope that answers
Brenda's
the question well enough. So
I think it. I can't talk for Brenda, but I would think that it would. So last question was from Skip Burns. And if you had to pick just a handful of plants to start with for anyone to put in their yard to support pollinators, what would they be? So Tom and I kind of discussed this one ahead of time, and we were each going to pick 5 plants. So we came up with a top 10. So Carolyn, you're more than welcome to throw in whatever you want. So we'll give you a turn as well. I don't want to put you on the spot, so we'll let you go last while we go if you want to think of a few. So for me, the first plant I thought of was Monarda punctata, because it's a pollinator magnet. We realized as soon as we started producing plants to collect seed, that was the first block of plants that we realized as you were walking up to it, you could hear it humming. It was so active with pollinators while it was blooming, and that was the first thing that stood out. And it's a very unique flower, and a very cool plant, and I thought that was a great choice. Living in New Jersey, you can't not mention blueberry. It's a New Jersey staple, and it's loved by the native bumblebee and also the native solitary bees. And birds love them too. You know, and I had to laugh because I mentioned on other podcasts, my fiance is from Poland, and there's something about the relationship with people from Poland and blueberries. They love blueberries and blackcurrants. So the birds are having a field day with the blueberries this year. My fiance is not happy.
Also the state fruit.
I didn't know that. Is it really?
Yeah, I saw that earlier too. I think I knew that, but it was good to get the reminder.
Well, I'm glad I mentioned it then. This one's not native to New Jersey, but we do have listeners all over, so I thought I'd mention Amsonia hubrichtii. I'm trying to remember the common name, Blue Star, I think it is. But it's loved by butterflies, skippers, moths, and bees. I love it for the foliage. Even though it has a very unique flower, it has very fern-like soft foliage that kind of waves in the wind, and it turns like a yellowish orange in the fall. And it's got it just adds a great texture to any garden, and it, by added bonus, it does bloom. Cardinal flower for hummingbirds. I love cardinal flower. I don't think I could have a list without putting that one on there. And when you think of helping just ecosystems, you have to mention milkweed for monarchs. So those are my top 5. Tom, how about you?
So I went super, I don't want to say basic, but if I was going to start a garden, these would be the 5 things I'd find easiest. Well, I shouldn't say if I was going to start a garden. When I started my garden, these were like the 5 things I really wanted to put in there because they're easy to grow. They're conventionally beautiful. And I figured if these are if I was going to try and convince someone else to start a garden, I'd say to pick off of these 5 things, maybe 6 or 7 if I really wanted to add some. But the first one I had was false sunflower, which is Heliopsis helianthoides. It gets a little big and it can spread a little bit, but it's easy to grow and it gets a lot of generalists. The big yellow flowers get a lot of generalists and get a lot of, get a lot of insect pests, a lot of aphids, but you get a lot of predatory insects like your lacewing larvae and your ladybugs. So you get a lot of variety just from that plant.
You know, it does get tall, but if you're managing it in a garden setting, like when it gets up 2 feet, cut it back to a foot. Like you can keep it manageable because it is one that will tend to flop a little bit if it gets a little stretched, but you can definitely keep that one managed in a garden setting.
The next one I put was Monarda fistulosa, or wild bergamot. Kind of same reasons. It's really easy to go. It'll spread some. Smells really nice. You do have to worry about downy mildew if it gets a little bit too wet. But you get some really interesting pollinators. You still get some of the generalist pollinators, but you get some other stuff that's a little bit more rare, I guess is the right way to say it. And it's a really beautiful flower. You're not going to have to worry about something messy that has little tiny flowers on it. It gets a bigger fireworky type flower. So it's something you could suggest to a friend. Hey, you want some pollinators in your garden? Try this. So the next one I had was Penstemon digitalis, which is foxglove beard tongue. Mostly because it's the same thing. It kind of plays nice. It doesn't get too big. It flowers earlier in the season, so it's one of the first food sources for pollinators. And we love taking pictures of all the stingers sticking out of the end of the flowers when they're feeding on them, because the bees really get in there to get the nectar out and get the pollen out. So they make some really cool flowers when you just have the fuzzy little bumblebee butt hanging out the end.
I like bee butts, and I cannot lie.
Yeah. Now, this fourth one was a little bit of a toss-up to me because I really like Liatris a lot. Liatris baccata in particular, the blazing star.
I do too.
But the other one I put was just, I think, better for pollinators overall, and that's your Joe Pye weeds. And they can get really big, but just the flower head and that cluster of flowers being so big and so great, it's just like a helicopter pad for butterflies to land on and feed, and they'll stay there for a long, long time. And I think the height with that big flower kind of complements each other, because it'll get big, it'll kind of droop over just slightly, and you can get some really cool pictures just off that flower. I found when I go to like plant sales, you have your Joe Pye fans and your Joe Pye haters, and the Joe Pye fans will get like every single plant they can because they love them so much.
Yeah.
And then others are like, "Oh, this thing can get up like 8 feet. I don't want anything close to that." So it's a little more controversial, but I know it's really beneficial, and that's one of the things monarchs really like as they're coming through later in the summer, just because it provides a lot of nectar and it's that big surface from the land on. And the last one I picked was it's a really conventional landscape plant. Is native, but it's already used quite a bit, and that's the eastern redbud. And that's primarily because it's one of the earlier food sources for a lot of these pollinators. It's one of those plants you can, if your neighbor says, "Hey, I know you like native flowers and you're doing a lot of stuff for pollinators. I want to try some too. What's something I can do?" It's something you can suggest. That there's things that are more beneficial, but it's an easy stepping stone to get them there. You don't want to go and say, "Oh, you need to plant some rare willow so that these specialist willow bees have food," or plant. I'm trying to think of something that's a little uglier, I guess is the wrong word to say, but it's not something that is
uglier. Come on.
I know uglier is not the right word, but why I chose redbud was because it's something that you can really. People already are using it, and as long as you're using something that's neonic free and hopefully is of local ecotype, you're going to have a lot of success with pollinators using something that's going to be conventionally beautiful. You're not going to have someone driving by and yelling out the window to get rid of all those weeds in your yard because it's something they're going to see at other houses down the street.
Exactly.
So,
exactly. All right, Carolyn, would you like to add?
Well, I didn't realize we could do trees.
You can,
so,
yes.
Okay. Well, if we do trees and you have the space, you should do a tulip poplar
Very
or
nice.
tulip tree. They have beautiful flowers. You won't be able to see them, but they're really good for hummingbirds and other early migrants coming back, because they're definitely one of the first to bloom. And then a lot of the plants that I was thinking of are ones that you already mentioned, like Joe Pye weed and blazing star. But I also wanted to add grasses are really important. So you can do grass,
Yeah.
sedge,
Oh, yeah.
so like little blue stems, switchgrass. If you want something a little bit bigger and clumpy. Any of the sedges are also really great for pollinators because you want to support that entire life cycle. You need structure for them to pupate on. So throwing in some grasses in there would be really great just for your own visual enjoyment of the different textures and the qualities that they have. And they, in the fall, they have a really nice quality too. In the winter, where they turn, like, especially switchgrass, there's that nice bronze color. So it's a great choice. I would also throw in there New England Aster or New York Ironweed, both beautiful, bluish purple colors, and goldenrods too. I know people are not generally a huge fan of goldenrods because they can become really pushy and spread, but they're great pollinators, great for pollinators, and they're blooming later on in the season. So, get something to bloom early on, in the middle of the summer, and then at the end of the summer, and you can enjoy it all season long.
There's a lot of great choices with native goldenrods. There's plenty to choose from that will fit any setting that you're looking for. So, people, goldenrod just has such a bad stigmatism to it because people associate it with, I think, hay fever. But please, it's not the case. Use them. They're great pollinators.
Yeah. Well, I think we talked about it that they have those beautiful colors because they want to bring plants to them. The ones that are causing all your pollen woes are green and inconspicuous because why would the plant put that energy, into making this beautiful flower if it's just going to throw its pollen everywhere?
Exactly. So this is the time of the show where we ask the one final question. And if you've listened, you know what it is. Are you prepared? Are you ready?
I will try.
All right. What is your favorite native plant?
Ooh.
I know it's hard.
Probably. It's probably the plant that I'm looking at that moment.
All right.
So, it really depends. In the spring, I love bloodroot. I get so excited when I see those little lampposts come up at like Enchanter's Nightshade with those little fairy-looking flowers with little shoes on, and I don't know, trees. All those white oaks, chestnut oaks, American sycamore. I don't think I can really pick one. It's just going to be whatever I'm seeing at that moment is probably my favorite.
I'm starting to appreciate oaks and oaks more than just caterpillar larvae and things. Just as we're experiencing issues in New Jersey with bacterial leaf scorch, and we're starting to see a decline in oaks, you start to appreciate their valor more and more. So I've definitely started singing their praises. That's one that, people just don't think of an oak in that way, but it's extremely important.
Well, when you come across like a mature white oak with that bark just peeling just like ever so slightly, and the branches are so big and magnificent, it's just, I don't know.
There's nothing like it. There's nothing like it. There really isn't. All right, final thoughts. Tom, would you like to go first? Would you want to let Carolyn go first? Yeah, I can go first. You want to go first? Okay.
Let's let our guest go first.
Okay. All right, Carolyn, we always give everyone. Yeah, I like going last anyway. So we give everyone a final thought, just based on our conversations and everything that we've talked about. Is there anything that you want to add about anything at all? You can go in any direction you want.
I think I would just really like to drive home the message that, the choices that you make affect everything around you. So be a good land steward, choose native plants, get involved in your community, and really embrace the fact that you're part of this ecosystem.
Very nice. Tom, you want to go or you want me to go?
I can go.
All right.
So the first one is, if you haven't and you're capable of doing this, just visit the Sauerlands. Go for a bike ride. It doesn't have to be through that Sauerland Spectacular. I think you have some trail maps for other times of year. But even if you're just going on your own, just visit it. It's such a unique area of New Jersey and really of just the Mid-Atlantic. You don't find that kind of habitat many other places, and I know you'll enjoy it. And if you need other reasons to go there, stop at Brickpine Tavern or Troon Brewing or with the Sauerland Mountain Spirits, or there's all. If you really want to go, you can spend your time at Hillbilly Hall.
We have a lot of good history of drinking here.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you could make a day of it. You could make an afternoon of it, and I think everyone would really enjoy it. I'm going to also add on, join our Facebook group. Like we started with these questions, we're going to try and do that some more often, and every once in a while when we have guests, we're going to ask for some listener feedback before we have the guest. Hey, what are you guys interested in hearing this person talk about? And that way we can throw questions at our guests that are pertinent to what you actually want to listen to. So we want to get that engagement up. So.
Yeah, the group has been quiet, but we've been quiet in it also. So we need to do a better job as well. Yeah. But I love that everyone submitted questions, and if you have questions for Carolyn, she is a member of the group as well as other people from the Sourland Conservancy, other employees. So please, if you have questions, share them. I'm sure you'd be happy to answer them.
Yeah.
So, all right, my final thought is for anyone that wants to get involved. And it doesn't have to be your brainchild, especially when you're trying to think of how to get involved. It doesn't have to be insular. Look around at what other people are doing and how other organizations are handling it. Be a part of multiple organizations. Try a few. Find out which one best suits you. But just the key aspect is to be active. And it just starts with one small step. And take that first step and see where it leads you. And just you may find yourself changing your career. Who knows? But we're trying to give everyone a very well-rounded idea of how you can be involved and what great work organizations are doing. And I think Sauerland Conservancy is a great example of great work, especially in such a unique environment, and what they're doing to help and educate and protect. And it's great to see, especially here in our backyard in New Jersey, that we can go visit it. It may not be something that if you're local, you can visit, but hopefully if you're this way, make it a destination, or make some of these other places a destination. Especially during COVID-19, my fiance and I basically been doing nothing but visiting parks. Like as soon as they were open again, we're just checking them off our list and doing a lot of hiking and exploring. And it's a real game changer when you start making it a bigger part of your everyday. So let it become part of your everyday. That's it. Awesome. That's my final thought. Well, thank you very much. All right, awesome. So we did vow that we were going to switch this up a little bit. So Tom and I are switching roles to see if we can get through this.
If it's me that just stumbles through it, or if it's that hard. So, but anyway, I guess that really just wraps it up. So thank you guys again for joining us. We really hope you enjoyed listening to listening about. Fran and I already
so, we'll see how I do on my half, because now I'm completely. But
now I'm running low on sleep, and I got excuses now.
I will.
We hope you enjoyed listening. We hope you enjoyed listening about the Sauerland Conservancy. Please follow them at www.sauerland.org on Twitter, and that's @Sauerland.org. Facebook is @Sauerland Conservancy, and Instagram is @Sauerland_Conservancy. Thank you for everyone for listening to Native Plants Healthy Planet, presented by Pinelands Nursery.
Yeah, I'm totally out of my element too. I just looked at it, I'm like, what am I saying? You can listen to the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast directly at www.nativeplantshealthyplanet.com. You can also check us out at Podbean, iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, YouTube, or you can just ask Alexa to play the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast.
I'd like to give a big thank you to Stephen Mahar for contributing our theme music. You can follow us on Twitter at Pinelands Nursery. Facebook is /Pinelands Nursery NJ. Instagram is @Pinelands Nursery. On YouTube is also @Pinelands Nursery. And let's keep this conversation going. Join that Native Plants Healthy Planet Facebook group, and we're interested in seeing your pictures of your yard, what pollinators you have joining you in your garden, and just what questions you have. Maybe other people in the group are going through the same thing, or maybe it's something we're going to discuss on the podcast. And while you're at it, go ahead and leave us a 5-star review on iTunes reviews, and tell us what you liked about listening.
Tell us more about
with
us.
That. Yeah. We're a little rusty, so don't mention that. But with that, Thank you again, everyone. I'm Tom.
And I am Fran. Carolyn, thank you so much for being a part of this.
Thank you for having me.
Anytime. This has been wonderful. And thanks again, everyone, for listening. We will see you all next time. Until then, keep it native.
Thank you for listening to the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. Remember to like, share, follow, and comment.